How do you go about doing agile projects? You start from a high level, which is the vision, then you have a roadmap, and then you plan the release. That will probably answer your question that, hey, how do you do agile contracting, fixed sprint contracts? So release is probably 3 to 4 months, and each sprint is, how many days sprints we have, friends? 1 week, 2 weeks. The most common is 2 weeks. According to Scrum Report 2015, most common sprint length is 2 weeks. Scrum says 1 to 4 weeks. But the idea is in simple. If anything that cannot be done in a month, anything which cannot be measured in a month, will not happen. So try and focus and get it done. So you have a self-organizing and cross-functional team of 3 people: the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the dev team. That's called as a Scrum team. How many of us work in those teams? That's it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wow, out of 50 people, I think only 6. That's like, let's say 40, so around 15-20%.
Ask again, you'll get more.
So friends, how many of us work in agile teams? Raise your hand, ladies and gentlemen. Anybody who raises a hand gets a chocolate.
A glass of wine.
A glass of wine right there. Still the same. I think the time and the food.
2 glasses.
Okay. So the product owner. Now typically in companies I've seen, there's a committee, which is a product. Anybody has that scenario? A committee is the product owner.
COP?
Communities of practice, you mean? Okay. The idea is that it is one person. It is not a committee. And the reason is, in one team, there can only be one guy. Like in one jungle, there can only be one king, one lion. And this lion can go and talk to all the other lions in the jungle. But for this particular area, this is the guy we will listen to. So you figure out who other lions are. But not every single lion can come and terrorize us, you know. You will get terrorized by you. But you figure out the rest. That's the idea. I mean, again, this is not a right way of putting it, but product owner should be one person who understands the vision. And Jeffrey Moore talked about it in his book. This is a very interesting book if you like reading, Crossing the Chasm. Anybody's read it? Yeah. Any observations from the book?
So Jeffrey Moore talks about the way that companies go through these cycles, and that when new products are introduced, the chasm has to be jumped across, or that goes through the release and early adopter phases. Maybe I'm mixing up others of his books and besides Crossing the Chasm, but
no, I think you're on the dot. That how do you cross this inertia and jump and create something new, so that you can stay, alive. So that's the idea. But what he says that, hey, you should have an elevator pitch. In the sense, in the elevator, you should be able to tell your CEO that, hey, this is what I'm going to create for you, and this is how it is going to benefit you, and this is how it is different from the competition. So there's like the user story, there's a specific word. Like as a user, I want to do this so that I can have this benefit. Likewise, you have an elevator pitch, and he has a template, you can use that. So the product owner is the single person who owns the requirements. He orders them, prioritizes them, and he or she is responsible for the delivery of the what challenges you guys face with the product owners? Creeping requirements keep on changing. Okay.
And we don't prioritize it. It just comes as a request. So where does it stand in the list? It's not very good.
Very good. The most common I've heard is that my product owner is not even there.
Yeah.
So
Just keeps moving around.
yeah, it just keeps moving around.
Since product owner is not present in the Scrum or
Yeah, that's the number one I've heard. But again, the expectation is that he or she doesn't have to be there all the time, but the feedback has to be available from them. Now, physical presence versus intellectual presence. I think the focus is more on the intellectual presence. Also, in certain meetings, physical presence is expected, and we'll talk about them. But if the product owner himself or herself is not clear, Nick, if the product owner himself or herself is not very clear as to what they will deliver, how do you think the team will build it?
If the product owner is not
Clear.
So if the product owner is not, I was talking to her, but yeah, I'll answer here. So if the product owner is not clear about the product itself, he or she needs to have a meeting with the stakeholders to understand the product plus the developers. The team should be there to have some kind of an idea about the product. Product owner is the soul of that particular project. Without
good.
product owner knowledge, it will not go further.
Wonderful. Let's clap, friends. Amazing. So the product owner is the sole, king of the project. Without product owner's inputs, nothing will happen. So therefore, it is important that the product owner is present, is helping, and clarifying things, because the team will build what you tell them. And if the team doesn't know, what will they build? So not only he or she should know what the requirements are, he should also be able to prioritize them, order them, and sometimes he may not understand the technicality. He can take the help from the team. Hey, what do you mean by this Active Directory? What do you mean by these stored procedures? And what do you mean by this interface, UI, database layer? Can you tell me? So you can have that kind of clarity from the team. You may not understand everything, but another thing, the last point, organization accepts him. What do you think that means? Lion for the team. Everybody else thinks he's a lion. If that lion goes somewhere and he becomes what is the other one? The fox, then it's not going to be successful. So he should be the single source of requirements and user story. There should not be any contradiction. That's another challenge, because Nick was asking me, Sam, what do you think Scrum faces challenges with, and what can be improved? So this is one area where a lot of companies face challenge.
So Sam, the product owner, can he or she change the requirements within the sprint since he has the authority? So we have started a sprint and product owner says that for XYZ reason, we want to.
Generally, it's not a good idea. But if you read the Scrum Guide, what it says is if you're going to cancel the sprint, and why are you going to cancel the sprint? Because, hey, the business has changed, the technology has changed, something has changed, and you're responding quickly to it, which is good, right? Then yes. But otherwise, once the sprint starts, the team should have undivided attention to get the job done. So the product owner cannot come and change the requirement.
In Lean, can they change it in the middle of integration? Very Lean.
I think right now we're discussing the Scrum framework. In Lean, they don't talk about the concept of locking in the sprint. In the Scrum world, they talk about the concept that once the sprint starts, before the sprint, have all the talk, right? After the sprint is done, have all the talk. But during the sprint, don't bother them. Every time you come and throw requirements, hey, do this also, okay? And then next day, somebody you come and do this, and third person comes, and fourth person comes, 10 people come and tell 10 different things, and half of those things don't tally. Am I right? So that's the problem, and that's what Scrum is trying to solve.